Zephyria's capital shone like a jewel in the void, its silver towers reflecting the light of the twin suns. The city's streets were orderly, bustling with Zephyrians preparing for the unexpected. Alarms had already sounded, warning of the approaching void marauder. Panic rippled through the population, but the leaders tried to maintain calm. In the command center of the capital, Lyra and Jason studied the incoming data. Holographic displays showed the marauder's trajectory, fast, precise, and unstoppable by ordinary Zephyrian defenses. "This is worse than we thought," Lyra said, her voice tight. "Our fleet alone cannot stop it." Jason nodded, eyes scanning the holograms. "Then we'll have to do what Zephyrians rarely do, think outside the rules, adapt, improvise." Lyra frowned. "Adapt? Improvisation is risky. It could cost lives." Jason's gaze met hers. "Sometimes the greatest risk is doing nothing." Lyra hesitated. She had always trusted protocol, strategy, and careful planning. But the Marauder was not normal. It had destroyed entire civilizations before, and rigid rules would not save Zephyria. She realized she had a choice: cling to fear and tradition or trust the human beside her. "All right," she said finally. "We do it your way. But we must act quickly." Jason smiled faintly. "Good. Let's get started." They moved to the fleet command deck where Zephyria's officers were already preparing ships for battle. The room was tense, filled with disciplined voices issuing orders and calculations. When Jason proposed his unconventional strategies using smaller, faster ships to distract the Marauder while concentrating energy in weak points, some officers scoffed. "This is dangerous," one senior officer said. "We cannot risk lives on improvisation." Lyra stepped forward. "We have no choice. If we follow only the rules, the Marauder will destroy us. Captain Hunter's plan gives us our only chance." Murmurs filled the room, but Jason did not waver. He worked with engineers to modify the ship's energy systems, using Zephyrian technology in ways no one had tried before. Lyra watched him, amazed at how quickly he adapted, using what they had to create new possibilities. As preparations continued, Lyra realized she was learning from him. Humans had a unique way of combining courage with problem-solving, and it was contagious. Her fear of him, once sharp and certain, had softened into respect, even admiration. By the time the twin suns set, casting long shadows over the capital, the fleet was ready. Ships lined the orbital docks, glowing softly with energy shields and weapon systems. Civilians were evacuated to secure areas, their eyes wide with fear and hope. Jason and Lyra stood on the observation deck overlooking the city. The first signs of the Marauder appeared on the horizon, a dark silhouette moving faster than any natural object. Its presence made the ground beneath them hum with a low, resonant energy. "It's huge," Lyra whispered. Even from orbit, she could sense the power emanating from the warship. Jason nodded. "And it's coming straight for us. Time to see if humans can really make a difference." Lyra swallowed hard. She knew this was no longer a drill. This was life or death, for the city, for her people, and for the strange alliance they had formed. As the Marauder approached, its energy pulses lit up the surrounding space. The Zephyrian fleet moved into formation, but Jason noticed flaws in their pattern, gaps that the enemy could exploit. He quickly adjusted their strategy, assigning smaller ships to feint attacks while concentrating the main fleet at strategic points. The first strike came without warning. Energy beams sliced through space, shattering a Zephyrian cruiser before it could even respond. Alarms blared. Officers shouted orders. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. Jason moved calmly, directing ships with precision. "Focus fire here. Move the decoys to the left. Shield the civilians." Lyra followed his instructions, coordinating the fleet alongside him. She realized that the human's intuition, his ability to act under pressure, was unmatched. The Zephyrians relied on rules, simulations, and calculations, but Jason relied on observation, instinct, and creativity. And in this moment, instinct was what they needed. The battle raged. The Marauder's weapons were devastating, tearing through Zephyrian defenses. Yet under Jason's guidance, the fleet adapted. They used the asteroid belts near the planet as cover, dodging deadly energy beams while launching counterattacks. Lyra witnessed the humans' courage firsthand. Jason led a small squadron directly into the Marauder's attack path, drawing its fire away from the main fleet. His ship was nimble, weaving through blasts that would have destroyed a conventional cruiser. "You're risking everything," Lyra shouted over comms. Jason's voice was steady. "I'm keeping the Marauder busy." "Trust me," Lyra bit her lip. She did trust him, but fear still clawed at her chest. She knew that even the bravest human could be destroyed. Yet she could also see how his daring inspired others. The fleet's morale surged, their fear replaced with determination. Amid the chaos, Jason spotted a weak point on the Marauder's hull. A small vent, almost invisible, likely part of its energy system. "There," he said, pointing. "That's our chance." Lyra studied the feed. "It's tiny. We could lose half the squadron trying to reach it." Jason smiled faintly. "Then we make it count. Zephyrians don't always see the chance when it's small. Humans do." Lyra felt a spark of hope. Perhaps the human beside her could indeed make a difference. Perhaps together they could turn the tide. They executed the plan. Smaller ships darted around the Marauder, distracting its weapons, while the main squadron, led by Jason, targeted the weak point. Energy beams struck, shields flared, and for a brief moment the Marauder staggered. Cheers erupted in the fleet. Civilians watching from safe zones clapped and shouted. Lyra's heart raced, not just from relief, but from a growing admiration for Jason. He had taken risks she could never have imagined. Yet every move was calculated, precise, and courageous. But the battle was far from over. The Marauder recovered quickly, redirecting its energy to counterattack. Jason's ship shook violently under a blast, but he remained focused, issuing orders and guiding others to safety. Lyra realized something important. Fear was natural, but courage and the willingness to act despite fear was what separated humans from others. She had feared Jason at first, feared his boldness, his unpredictability. Now she understood. That boldness was exactly what her world needed. Hours passed and the Marauder's attacks continued. Yet under Jason's guidance, the Zephyrian fleet adapted with every strike. Energy shields were reinforced, ships moved with unexpected flexibility, and civilians were protected. The tide of the battle slowly shifted. By the end of the first day, the Marauder had suffered significant damage. Its attacks were less coordinated, its shields flickering. Lyra and Jason regrouped in the command center, exhausted but determined. "You did well," Lyra said quietly, her violet eyes meeting his. I was wrong about you," Jason smiled faintly. "We're not done yet. This is just the beginning. But we've shown them that we can fight back." Lyra nodded. "Your courage, your instincts, they've changed everything. I can see now why humans are different. Why your kind survives, even against impossible odds." Jason looked at her, tired but resolute. "Then let's keep proving it. For Zephyria. For everyone who depends on us." Outside, the twin suns rose once more, casting light over a city still standing, still hopeful. The Marauder was wounded but not defeated, and in the hearts of Zephyrians a new understanding was taking root. Humans were not reckless outsiders. They were allies, capable of courage, ingenuity, and leadership when it mattered most. Lyra felt a shift inside herself. She had feared her human companion, feared what his boldness might bring. Now she trusted him, not blindly but fully enough to follow his lead. And she knew, deep in her heart, that together they had a chance to face the darkness approaching their world. The siege had begun. Zephyria had survived the first day thanks to a human's courage. And for Lyra, that human was no longer a figure of fear but a symbol of hope. The next morning, the skies above Zephyria were filled with smoke and light. The Void Marauder hung in orbit like a dark moon, its enormous shape blotting out the sun. Each of its movements sent tremors through the atmosphere. Its weapons glowed with red energy, ready to fire again. Inside Zephyria's command tower, alarms echoed constantly. Officers hurried from one control station to another, voices overlapping as they relayed damage reports. The night's battle had ended, but the war had just begun. Lyra stood near the main observation window, her violet eyes watching the sky. Even from the ground she could see the faint outline of the Marauder far above. It looked unstoppable. She took a deep breath to steady her nerves. Behind her, Jason Hunter entered the room, his uniform dusty, his expression calm despite the chaos. He had barely rested since the fight began. His human endurance surprised everyone around him. "Status report?" he asked one of the officers. 70% of our fleet remains operational," the officer replied, "but the outer defense ring has collapsed. The Marauder will begin its ground attack soon." Jason nodded, studying the holographic map of the system. Then we bring the fight to it before it reaches the surface. Lyra turned to him. You mean to attack it directly? That's suicide. Jason met her gaze, his eyes steady. If we wait, Zephyria will be destroyed anyway. We can't outlast it, but maybe, just maybe, we can outthink it. Lyra wanted to argue, but she remembered everything she had seen so far. Jason's strange mix of courage and creativity had saved them before. Humans didn't just fight, they adapted, they found ways when others saw none. All right, she said quietly. What's your plan? Jason brought up a series of blueprints on the holographic display. The Marauder has a core reactor powered by gravitational energy. It's what gives it that destructive force. If we can disable it even for a few minutes, Zephyria's fleet can strike the main control section. Lyra frowned. Disable it? That's impossible. Our weapons cannot penetrate its shields. Not with normal weapons, Jason agreed. But what about the artifact we found on the colony? Lyra's eyes widened. The ancient sphere? Yes, Jason said. It generates massive energy bursts. If we can connect it to one of our ships and focus the energy, it could pierce the Marauder's shields long enough for an attack. Lyra hesitated. The plan was dangerous and untested. If the artifact overloaded, it could destroy their own ships instead. But doing nothing meant certain destruction. You're serious, she said finally. Jason smiled faintly. I wouldn't be human if I wasn't. Lyra sighed but nodded. Then we do it. I'll contact the engineers. Within hours, a small strike team was assembled. 3 Zephyrian cruisers and 1 human-modified ship that Jason would pilot himself. The artifact was loaded aboard, glowing softly within the ship's core. Lyra joined him despite protests from the command officers. If you go, who will lead the council? One asked. Lyra replied firmly. I lead better beside my people, not behind them. As the ships launched, the twin suns reflected off their hulls, giving them a golden shimmer. They rose through the clouds and into the darkness of space. Ahead, the Marauder loomed larger with every second, its surface crawling with lines of moving light. Inside the cockpit, Lyra sat beside Jason. The human pilot moved with calm precision, adjusting controls and scanning data. You've done this before? Lyra asked. Jason chuckled softly. Not exactly, but humans learn fast. Lyra shook her head in disbelief. You are impossible. Maybe, he said with a grin, but impossible things are my specialty. As they approached the Marauder, the first wave of enemy drones emerged, sleek black machines armed with glowing cannons. Jason's hands moved quickly over the controls. The ship twisted and turned, dodging fire with impossible accuracy. Lyra's heart raced as bright energy beams flashed around them. She had flown in battles before, but nothing like this. Jason made it look effortless. Left flank. Lyra shouted. 3 more incoming. I see them, Jason said, firing back with sharp precision. The drones exploded one by one, scattering debris across the void. The fleet pressed forward. The 3 Zephyrian ships provided covering fire, while Jason's vessel charged directly toward the Marauder's surface. Lyra could feel the vibration under her feet as the artifact's power grew stronger. The ship's sensors struggled to contain its energy. Energy levels rising, Lyra said urgently. If this continues, the containment will fail. Jason adjusted the controls. Just a few more seconds. We need to get closer. The Marauder's shield shimmered ahead, an ocean of shifting light. Jason aimed straight at it. Now, he shouted. Lyra activated the artifact. A bright beam of energy erupted from their ship, striking the Marauder's shields. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire warship trembled as the beam pierced through its defenses. Shields are down, an officer shouted over comms. Zephyrian fleet, full attack, Jason commanded. Dozens of ships opened fire at once, focusing on the weak point. Explosions rippled across the Marauder's surface. Fragments of armor broke away, revealing inner machinery glowing with blue light. But victory was not yet certain. The Marauder responded with overwhelming force, firing back with energy blasts that shook the entire fleet. Jason's ship was hit by debris, alarms flashing red. Damage to the left wing, Lyra called out. I see it, Jason said, gripping the controls tightly. Hold on. The ship spun dangerously close to the Marauder's surface, scraping along its armor before stabilizing. Sparks flew inside the cockpit. Lyra's breath came fast, but Jason remained calm. Are you all right? He asked. Lyra nodded, still shaken. I will be. Jason smiled slightly. Good, because we're not done yet. The artifact flickered, unstable after the massive energy burst. Jason realized they could only use it once more before it burned out. He looked at Lyra, who was already thinking the same thing. "One final shot?" she asked. He nodded. "One final shot." The fleet regrouped, preparing for the last strike. Jason directed them toward the Marauder's exposed core, now visible through the damaged armor. The energy readings were off the charts. "If we hit that, the entire ship could collapse," Lyra said. Jason took a deep breath. "Then let's make it count." The artifact glowed brighter than before, light spilling through the cockpit. Lyra shielded her eyes. The ship's systems strained, alarms blaring. Jason's hands moved quickly, guiding the weapon's aim with precision. "Ready?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "Do it." Jason activated the final burst. A column of pure light shot from the ship, piercing through the Marauder's core. For a second, time seemed to freeze. Then a massive explosion erupted from within the enemy warship. The shockwave rippled through space, shaking every ship in the fleet. The Marauder began to collapse, its dark structure breaking apart. The once invincible weapon of destruction was finally falling. Cheers echoed through the Zephyrian fleet. On the ground, civilians looked up to see the dark shadow in the sky crumble into glowing fragments. The entire planet seemed to breathe again. Inside the cockpit, Lyra exhaled slowly, watching the debris drift away. "We did it," she whispered. Jason leaned back, exhausted but smiling. "We did it together." Lyra turned to him, her eyes soft. "You risked everything. For a world that wasn't even yours." Jason shrugged lightly. "That's what humans do. We protect what we can, even when it's not easy." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, realizing that the human she had once feared had become something more than an ally. He had become a symbol of courage, the embodiment of hope. As the fleet returned to Zephyria, the people cheered from every tower and every city street. The Marauder was gone and the planet was safe. But in Lyra's heart, the victory meant more than survival. It meant understanding. The man she had once seen as reckless had shown her what true bravery looked like. He had stood between her world and annihilation, and he had not faltered. The vast hall stretched wider than any human mind could imagine. Crystal walls reflected countless lights, making the space shimmer as though stars had been captured inside. Every surface gleamed, polished to a perfection that no human or alien hand could surpass. The air hummed softly with technology and energy, a reminder of how far the galaxy had evolved beyond the simple worlds of Earth. At the center of this magnificent hall stood a collection of humans, small in number, but carefully arranged. They were presented as pets for the amusement of the Galactic Council, a species that believed humans were docile, weak, and easy to control. Their clothing was plain, utilitarian, and entirely alien in design, suppressing any hint of individuality. Yet their eyes were unmistakably human, bright, alert, and endlessly curious. Among the crowd of aliens observing the scene, one figure drew particular attention. He was tall, with skin that shimmered in shifting shades of green, and eyes that glowed faintly like lanterns in the dark. He carried himself with the calm arrogance of one who believed himself superior to every other being in the galaxy. This was Ambassador Calith, a diplomat of a mighty alien empire, known for his cunning and ruthlessness. Calith's gaze swept over the humans. His lips curved in a slow, mocking smile. "Look at them," he whispered to a companion, his voice smooth yet dripping with disdain. "They call these creatures humans, pets. Is this the famous species? Weak, obedient, and utterly useless beyond serving their masters." The humans remained still. Some looked nervous, fidgeting under the alien scrutiny. Others, younger and less aware of the danger, peeked around curiously, wondering what awaited them. The room's tension was thick, but the humans did not speak. They had learned that silence was safer. "Watch carefully," Calith said. "Notice how they obey without question. See how little intelligence they display. This is the pride of their kind, they say. Pathetic." He chuckled, a sound that echoed sharply against the crystal walls. An alien attendant clapped their hands, and a human was brought forward to perform a simple task. The creature had been instructed to move a small glowing cube from one platform to another. It did so carefully but without the precision of the alien-designed mechanism. Calith's smile widened. "Pathetic," he repeated under his breath. Even in a simple task, they failed to impress. The human returned to the line of others, eyes lowered, but not without a hint of determination. Calith barely noticed. He was already turning his attention to a group of younger humans, eager to mock their lack of coordination. But then something unexpected happened. Among the humans, a man stood slightly apart. He was not the youngest nor the strongest, but there was a calmness about him that drew attention. His movements were deliberate, his posture relaxed yet alert. Calith's glowing eyes caught him immediately. The man looked directly at Calith, not with fear, but with a quiet confidence that seemed to resist the alien's authority. For the first time that day, Calith paused. The amusement in his expression faltered, replaced by curiosity tinged with unease. The attendant, sensing the shift in Calith's mood, brought forward a new task. A puzzle designed to test logic and memory lay before the humans. Calith leaned in, expecting the usual fumbling, the usual mistakes. The older human approached the puzzle slowly. He studied it not hurriedly, not out of fear, but as though he were already seeing a solution that others could not. With careful hands, he began to rearrange the pieces. The assembly clicked into place perfectly, a solution that even the aliens had thought was beyond human capability. A murmur spread through the crowd. Aliens whispered to one another, their pride challenged. Calith's expression hardened. He had believed humans were simple, incapable of innovation or cleverness. Yet here was proof to the contrary, delivered by a single human who refused to bow or show fear. Calith's mind raced. He had underestimated these beings entirely. His laugh, once loud and mocking, faded into silence. He stared, momentarily lost in thought, as if trying to unravel a puzzle far more complex than the human one before him. The human finished the task and stepped back, still calm, still holding Calith's gaze. It was not aggression nor challenge, it was quiet assertion. A reminder that even as pets, humans were not what they seemed. Calith shifted slightly, annoyed at the distraction this single human caused. But even as he tried to dismiss it, he felt a strange respect for him. A dangerous feeling for someone like him, trained to see humans as inferior. Interesting, he murmured, almost to himself. Perhaps I have been mistaken. The demonstration continued, but the energy in the room had changed. Other humans, seeing one of their own perform beyond expectations, began to lift their heads. A spark of courage moved through them, subtle but unmistakable. Even the youngest timid humans began to notice that fear was not the only way to respond. Calith, though, maintained his posture, his exterior calm and collected. He would not show the inner uncertainty that now churned inside him. But he could not ignore it either. That single human, with nothing but his gaze and quiet intelligence, had unsettled the most confident ambassador in the galaxy. Later, after the demonstration, the humans were herded back into their quarters. The older human remained quiet, observing everything with sharp, calculating eyes. He seemed to understand more than anyone around him, and perhaps more than even Calith realized. Calith returned to his private chamber, alone. He replayed the human's actions and steady gaze in his mind. How could one being so small, so underestimated, shake his certainty so thoroughly? The question haunted him. Outside in the hall, the younger humans whispered among themselves, sharing excitement and hope in hushed tones. Perhaps their captivity was not as complete as the aliens believed. Perhaps humans had something the galaxy had not seen in centuries: resilience, intelligence, and courage beyond expectation. As night fell across the estate, Calith sat in silence, staring at the stars visible through the crystal walls. For the first time, he wondered about the true nature of humanity. Not as pets, not as weaklings, but as a species capable of far more than he had ever imagined. And somewhere in the quiet human quarters, the older human sat in reflection, knowing that the galaxy had only begun to understand what humans could achieve. The first day of the demonstration was over. The ambassador had laughed at humans, confident in their insignificance. But one look, one unwavering gaze had begun to unravel his certainty, and the story was only beginning. The next day, the demonstration hall was quieter than usual. The air was thick with anticipation. The aliens were curious, some anxious, and a few openly wary. Calith had called for a final exercise, an event meant to test the humans' endurance, problem-solving, and cohesion as a group. But today felt different. Calith, the ambassador who had once laughed at humans, entered with a new demeanor. He was calm, observant, and cautious. The memory of Elias's steady gaze and quiet courage replayed in his mind, reminding him that the humans before him were far more capable than he, or any of his council, had ever believed. The humans were led forward. Their eyes scanned the hall, but there was no fear this time, only focus. Elias walked among them, calm as ever, preparing them without needing to shout instructions. They had learned in the last days that calmness, observation, and careful action could overcome even the most difficult challenges. The task was complex, a simulated disaster scenario that combined elements of physical agility, critical thinking, and teamwork. The floor beneath them shifted unexpectedly, creating narrow pathways, sudden gaps, and rising platforms. Holographic obstacles moved unpredictably, while warning lights flashed across the hall. Aliens watched intently, expecting failure. Elias assessed the situation quickly. "Follow my lead. Watch carefully and trust each other," he instructed. His voice was steady, full of quiet authority. The humans moved as one, guided by Elias's subtle directions. Where one faltered, another assisted. Where a platform shifted unexpectedly, they adapted without hesitation. Every action was deliberate and thoughtful. Kaleth's gaze stayed locked on Elias. Every move the human made showed intelligence, leadership, and courage. Kaleth felt a strange sensation he could not name. Respect, admiration, perhaps even fear, though he would never admit it. The human before him, once a pet, had proven his kind was capable of far more than any alien had imagined. Minutes passed, and the humans reached the final stage. A wide chasm of glowing energy that seemed impossible to cross. The younger humans hesitated, their fear rising, but Elias stepped forward confidently. He studied the distance, the timing, and the shifting platforms. Then, with calm precision, he jumped, landing safely on the far side. "Now," he called, "follow carefully, exactly as I did." One by one, the humans followed. Some slipped, but Elias and others helped them, guiding hands and giving quiet encouragement. When the last human crossed safely, a hush fell over the hall. Every alien present stared, unable to deny what they had witnessed. The humans had succeeded where failure had seemed inevitable. Kaleth descended from the platform slowly. The hall remained silent, every eye on him. He stopped before Elias, who stood calmly, facing the ambassador. The two locked eyes. Kaleth's voice was quiet but firm. "You have proven yourself. Not just you, but all of them. Humans are stronger than we believed." Elias did not smile, but there was a calm confidence in his expression. "We are not strong because we seek to dominate," he said simply. "We are strong because we survive, we learn, and we care for each other." Kaleth studied him. These were not empty words. They carried truth, and the ambassador could feel it in the way Elias stood, unflinching, proud, yet humble. He realized then that this human, and his kind, had a quality no amount of technology or training could replicate. Resilience born from hope and courage. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Some still clung to old beliefs, but even they could not ignore the evidence before them. The humans were more than they had ever imagined. The notion of pets no longer applied. Kaleth inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of centuries of assumptions crumble. "I misjudged your kind," he admitted, almost to himself. "Perhaps the galaxy has misjudged you all." Elias inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the words. "Judgment is easy," he replied. "Understanding is harder." Kaleth's gaze swept over all the humans. They had followed Elias's lead with courage and intelligence. Every one of them had grown stronger through the trials, discovering their own abilities and surprising even themselves. "Let them leave the simulations," Kaleth commanded finally. "They have earned it." A murmur of astonishment ran through the hall. The humans had been treated as pets for generations, yet today, an ambassador had recognized their true value. Slowly, cautiously, they stepped forward, eyes bright, hearts pounding, but filled with a new confidence. Elias paused at the edge of the hall, glancing back at Kaleth. "Do you understand now?" he asked quietly. Kaleth nodded. "I do," he said. "Your strength is not only in your minds or your bodies, but in your will, your unity, and your courage. That is something my species has long forgotten." The humans left the hall that day changed. They had learned something important. Fear could be overcome, hope could guide action, and courage could shine even in the darkest moments. But more importantly, they had been seen, not as pets, not as curiosities, but as beings capable of shaping their own destinies. Kaleith remained behind, alone in the hall. He reflected on everything he had witnessed. For centuries, he had believed humans were insignificant. He had laughed at them, dismissed them, and treated them as objects. Yet one human, Elias, had shown him the truth. The ambassador's laughter had vanished, replaced by respect, awe, and a quiet understanding of the power of humanity. The stars outside twinkled brightly, like distant beacons of possibility. Kaleith realized that the galaxy was far larger and more unpredictable than he had ever thought. And in that realization he found something he had never experienced before: humility. Meanwhile, Elias and the humans returned to their quarters. The younger ones whispered excitedly, sharing their experiences and newfound confidence. Today they had not only survived, they had triumphed quietly and without violence. Elias walked among them, observing their joy. "Remember," he said, "we grow stronger together. One can guide, but all can succeed. That is how we survive and thrive." The humans nodded, understanding the truth in his words. The future was uncertain, but they now knew one thing for sure: they were not powerless. They were capable, resilient, and full of potential beyond what the galaxy had ever imagined. Kaleith left the estate that evening, walking slowly among the towers of the alien city. The wind was cool, carrying faint scents of alien flora. For the first time, he saw the galaxy not as a place to conquer, but as a realm full of potential, mystery, and life he had underestimated. In the days that followed, Kaleith began quietly advocating for a new understanding of humans. He spoke with other ambassadors and council members, sharing what he had seen. Slowly, the perception of humans began to shift. They were no longer dismissed as pets, no longer underestimated. They were respected, and cautiously the galaxy began to recognize that humanity's quiet strength could not be ignored. Back in the human quarters, Elias sat quietly by the window, watching the stars. He thought of the ambassador, of the council, of the challenges they had faced. Humans had survived centuries of misunderstanding and underestimation. Now, with every step forward, they were being recognized for what they truly were: clever, brave, and united. Elias smiled faintly. The galaxy had seen their strength, but the journey was only beginning. Today had been victory, not for violence, but for understanding. That was a strength no alien machine or weapon could match. The story that had begun with laughter had ended with respect. The ambassador had seen the truth, and humanity had shown its quiet brilliance. And somewhere, far across the stars, the galaxy began to shift ever so slightly, because humans had looked up, stepped forward, and refused to be dismissed. The galaxy was quiet in the early hours, but Princess Liara sensed an unease that no words could describe. The rogue Zelthari factions had not been idle since the warnings arrived. Scouts and covert agents moved through the shadows, and the feeling of imminent danger hung heavy over the human and Zelthari alliance. Liara could not shake the thought that soon events would unfold that would change everything she believed about humans and about Marcus. Marcus had noticed the tension too. Unlike many others, he did not panic. He spent hours in strategy rooms, reviewing every detail of the Alliance's defenses, running simulations, and coordinating with both human and Zelthari commanders. Liara watched him work and could not help but be amazed. He thought fast, acted decisively, and saw patterns in the galaxy that others could not perceive. Yet she also sensed there was something deeper, a strength that went beyond intellect or strategy, waiting to be revealed. Their first encounter with real danger came sooner than anyone expected. A fleet of rogue Zelthari ships appeared near a disputed sector, threatening human supply lines. The ships were advanced, sleek, and heavily armed. Their pilots had one mission: to strike fear into humans and force the Zelthari into submission. Liara and Marcus were aboard the flagship, directing defensive maneuvers when the first shots were fired. Energy beams lit the void like streaks of lightning, and explosions rocked smaller ships. Humans and Zelthari alike scrambled to respond, but it quickly became clear that the enemy was prepared for every known tactic. The fleet's officers were tense. Even experienced captains were struggling to anticipate the rogue Zelthari's unpredictable maneuvers. Marcus stood at the command center, his eyes scanning every readout, every sensor. He did not shout, nor panic. He simply analyzed, adjusted, and directed. Then a ship was hit directly. The blast would have destroyed it, but Marcus reacted instinctively. He extended his hand over the console, and energy, bright, glowing, and pure, shifted as if answering his will. The damaged ship was stabilized, the blast deflected, and the fleet could regroup. Liara's eyes widened in disbelief. She had seen humans display courage, ingenuity, and adaptability, but she had never seen anything like this. The Zelthari generals surrounding her gasped. They had never witnessed such raw, immediate control over energy in a human. This was not training or advanced technology. It was something else entirely. Something beyond what any Zelthari had thought possible. Marcus, What just happened? She asked, her voice trembling with awe. He looked at her, calm yet serious. I don't know entirely. I felt this before, but never like this. I think I can control energy. Somehow, I can direct it. The generals exchanged stunned glances. Liara saw a mix of fear and fascination in their eyes. To the Zelthari, this was more than power. It was impossible. Humans were never supposed to have abilities like this. And yet, here it was, in full display, saving a ship from destruction. As the battle continued, Marcus tested the limits of this newfound ability. He redirected incoming blasts, shielded smaller vessels, and even manipulated rogue ships' energy fields to temporarily disable them. The human and Zelthari crews adapted quickly, following his commands, inspired by his confidence. The rogue fleet, trained to expect predictable tactics, found themselves unprepared for a human who could defy conventional rules of warfare. Liara could hardly contain her excitement and fear. Marcus, you're incredible. But the Council, they must see this as dangerous. He nodded. I know. But right now we need to survive. After that, we will deal with the politics. The battle raged across the sector, but Marcus's interventions turned the tide. He was not only protecting ships, he was teaching the Zelthari something new. He demonstrated that strength was not only in advanced technology or strict formation, but also in creativity, courage, and the willingness to take risks. The humans' flexibility, combined with Marcus's emerging power, made their fleet a force no rogue faction had anticipated. During a pause in the fighting, Liara joined Marcus on the deck overlooking the fleet. You've changed everything, she said softly. I've always admired humans, but I did not imagine anything like this. Marcus looked at her, a small smile forming. I've never wanted to fight like this. But when the people I care about are in danger, something inside pushes me. I don't fully understand it yet, but I feel responsible. I feel capable. Liara nodded, realizing that the power Marcus wielded was not just physical. It was the sum of human courage, intelligence, and determination amplified to an extraordinary degree. The Zelthari had strength, discipline, and advanced technology, but they rarely had leaders who inspired loyalty, ingenuity, and hope at the same time. Marcus was proving that humans could excel in ways the galaxy had never imagined. The rogue fleet tried one final maneuver, a concentrated strike on the flagship itself. Energy beams converged, threatening to pierce its shields. Liara and the Zelthari generals braced for impact, certain that the flagship would fall. But Marcus acted. He raised his hands, focusing every ounce of concentration, and the energy around the ship shifted. Beams were redirected, absorbed, and neutralized. The flagship remained unharmed. Even the rogue fleet hesitated, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. No alien technology had ever done this. No known tactic could counteract it. And yet a human had just done the impossible. Liara felt a rush of pride, fear, and awe. She realized that Marcus's ability was more than just a personal gift. It was a symbol of human potential, a force that could inspire the galaxy. She also knew that this power would make them a target. The rogue Zelthari might retreat for now, but they would return, more determined than ever to destroy what they did not understand. As the dust settled, the fleet regrouped. Humans and Zelthari alike whispered about what they had just seen. Marcus remained calm, guiding the crews, coordinating repairs and ensuring the alliance remained strong. Liara watched him, feeling a mixture of admiration and wonder. That night, in the quiet of the observation deck, she turned to him. "Marcus, you saved countless lives today, but what you did, it is beyond anything the Zelthari have ever known." He shook his head slightly, humility in his gaze. "I did what I had to do, but it's not just me. Humans, we surprise people, we adapt, we find ways to endure. This is just one part of what we can do." Liara realized then that the real power was not in energy manipulation alone. It was in human ingenuity, courage, and the refusal to surrender even when the odds seemed impossible. Marcus embodied all of that, amplified to a level the galaxy had never seen. The stars outside the observation deck glimmered like scattered diamonds. Liara felt hope, determination, and something more. A deep trust in Marcus. The rogue Zelthari factions might return, the galaxy might challenge them, and the Council might resist change. But she knew that together Marcus and humanity could face anything, and the power that had just emerged in battle was only the beginning. She whispered quietly, almost to herself, "Perhaps humans are not just survivors. Perhaps they are the force the galaxy needs." Marcus stood beside her, his gaze steady. "And with you by my side, Liara, we will face whatever comes. No one will underestimate humanity again." The galaxy was changing. The rogue factions had underestimated the human spirit, and Marcus had shown that humans could wield strength no alien had ever seen. Not just power, but hope, ingenuity, and courage. Liara understood that this was only the beginning of a new era, and somewhere in the shadows the rogue Zelthari observed, their plans disrupted and their assumptions shattered. They had believed humans were weak, predictable, and controllable. But Marcus Kane had just proven them wrong. The awakening of his power would ripple through the galaxy, altering alliances, inspiring courage, and instilling fear. The true journey of humans, and of this unprecedented alliance, was only beginning. And Liara knew with unwavering certainty that she had chosen the right human to stand beside her.